Live streaming on YouTube from Rockwell Automation Fair. It's the Tech Ed Podcast. I am your host, Matt Kirkner. What an incredible amount of energy and excitement happening here in Chicago, Illinois at McCormick Place. We've got tons of people coming by the studio, waving, saying hello, introducing themselves, telling us about absolutely incredible technology and absolutely incredible partnerships, which is the topic of our discussion this afternoon. I will tell you, when we say lots of people coming by the booth, I understand 17,000, 18,000 people pre-registered for Rockwell Automation with us to talk about partnerships between education and industry, best practices in doing these things. These two guests are first Ann Borchert, Associate Vice President of Corporate Relations and Strategic Projects at Case Western University. Ann, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
And secondly, we introduce Juergen Weinhofer, Vice President of Common Architecture and Technology for Rockwell Automation. And Juergen, thank you as well for being with us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
We are going to have so much fun here on the Tech Ed Podcast. And I want to start, Ann, with a question for you. And I want to talk about hands-on education. I understand that Case Western University distinguishes itself in educational circles as an institution that really believes in that hands-on aspect of building skills and building competencies. So how do the partnerships, here's the question, how do the partnerships that you build with employers in your region and across the country and really around the globe help direct and enhance the efforts at Case Western?
Well, you know, it's really important for our students to have real-world experiences before they leave the university. And so bringing companies like Rockwell or others, Sherwin-Williams, Lubrizol, into the university to get projects that students can actually connect with so that when they go out in the real world, they've experienced it. And working with our faculty members as well. It's the same thing. We learn more about what's going on in the real world when we bring the companies in.
Is there an example that comes to mind of a project that a student would experience? And by the way, I'm a hands-on kinesthetic learner. I say, you know, I could sit in a classroom and take notes and nothing stuck until I personally went into the lab, or for that matter, went into the workforce and figured it out. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's why I learned calculus. Oh, no.
These are actually providing innovation prize funds, and they come in and our faculty members and students will actually pitch ideas, and it can be anything from cleaner water to a manufacturing facility running more effectively and efficiently.
So think about, I mean, you think about all of the educational opportunities and all of the, and I'll go to you, Juergen, in just a moment, but you think about all that result from an experience like that. Great ideas coming out of that because the economic support is coming your way. So really, really good example of the importance of hands-on learning. And Juergen, I know you're eager to jump in here. Tell us a little bit about some of these hands-on experiences that students might enjoy as they're going through a program like this.
Actually, I was talking about specifically hackathons. So we actually fund a lot of that information, these events, getting students early on, giving them projects and programs that they can work on. We bring people in from with the field experience, automation experience, help them through getting started. And then the teams always surprise us, the students surprise us in really new ideas that they bring in. And after 2 days, and it's really all-nighter that they typically do, it's really exciting to see the results. And then we actually go through, is it viable? Is it economical viable? Helping through them, is that a business case for that? And it's really exciting to see that. And then many of them, because of that, will then go on and work through internships and co-ops. This is more the classical way of getting into companies.
Sure.
But the hackathons, those really new, and it's really exciting for the student population.
And you think about that experience for a student. So you're involved in a hackathon. You're working directly with an employer. Maybe it's an industrial employer. Maybe it's a technology employer. Getting that real world experience, and as you say, you're surprised in some cases by the types of ideas that are coming from the students. Do you see a level of innovation or maybe a different way of thinking that's taking place among the students that are emerging into the workforce now?
Oh, absolutely. So I think the capabilities that a lot of the students have, especially on the software and some of the more modern software mechanisms, are amazing. So specifically, we invest a lot in edge connectivity, cloud connectivity, and historically most of our engineering community was in embedded software or hardware, And so combining this new talent with the existing talent and the application knowledge is really where the sweet spot is. And we love it. Yeah?
And in so many cases, I mean, these young people, as they're going through these experiences, they're fearless. I mean, I think about, people maybe my age learning a new technology or, interacting with, I spent a lot of time in manufacturing an industrial robot or a new PLC or a new software application or what have you. And it's like, wow, I have to understand everything about this before I touch it. And then we have this generation that'll just dive right in and interact with that technology right off the bat. So speaking of diving right in with technology and getting these hands-on experiences, Ann, I want to turn the sights to you now. And let's talk about earlier this year, you launched a smart manufacturing innovation center at Sears ThinkBox. So I'll tell you, I don't even know what that is, and I'm already really, really excited to hear because that sounds so incredibly cool. So tell us about this project and the role that the industry and academic partnerships play in making it successful.
Absolutely. Let me tell you about ThinkBox. So ThinkBox is actually the largest commercialization makerspace on a university campus in the country.
Wow.
And we've got 50,000 square feet of really an incredible playground.
That's a
for
large
our
manufacturing
students.
plant, right? And,
Absolutely.
oh my goodness, yeah.
Absolutely. And what it's done is we've got over 100 businesses that have been launched by our undergraduates.
Wow.
So they're coming in, and so we have a Rockwell lab that gets our students and faculty involved. Juergen was interested in having some upskilling opportunities, so we actually had some computer science faculty members doing a special Rockwell course.
Yep.
We talked about the K through 12 Envoys program that CASE has to bring particularly students from the Cleveland Municipal School District
Awesome.
On campus to get them excited about engineering and computer science.
Absolutely.
But Rockwell helped support that program, and we can't do it without that kind of support. So it's really being able to work with each other.
I think we see having a long-term partner at the university specific, like we have Ann here,
right,
is really, really important, because then you can actually build plans that are going to last for multiple years, and actually having those people being the conduit to all the other research activities that are happening within university. We couldn't do that without that institution or internal department inside CASE.
Absolutely. It's fascinating to hear the two of you talk about how this partnership came about and how you've built it over time. Andy, when you answered that last question, you hit on what we tell educators every time. We've been involved both at the Tech Ed podcast and other enterprises and putting together partnerships between large corporations and educators. I'll tell you a quick story because I know you'll get a kick out of it. I was the chief executive of a private equity-backed manufacturing company headquartered in central Wisconsin for about 6-7 years. And I got a letter, in this case it was from our local K-12 district, and it said, we're transforming our technical education program, and we've heard about other communities doing this with private support, and we would really appreciate your donation of $50,000. And that was the letter I got. It wasn't, what are we doing? It wasn't, tell me about your bit. It was, can I have $50,000? And then he called to follow up, and I was like, no. But here, what we tell them is, if you're trying to build a relationship with an employer, ask for help, not money. That's number one, is that let's talk about what are you trying to do? We have the same goals. We want a workforce that's going to promote economic development, promote innovation. We're doing all of the same things for all of the same reasons. Let's start with that. Second thing is check your agendas at the door, right? People come from manufacturing and education, all different political backgrounds, and let's forget about all that and let's talk about what we share in common. And then I'm gonna tell this story as well, just because I've got a controls person and an education person with me. You guys are gonna love this. So, I moved over from manufacturing about 7 years ago into the world of technical education, and I was giving a presentation on manufacturing technology, and I got up in front of a group of educators. There were probably 100 people in the room. And I was talking, and we talked about robotics, and we talked about data, and then I got into talking about PLCs, and I talked about how PLCs were driving manufacturing, and that nothing happened in the manufacturing floor without a PLC, going on and on and on. And finally, it was about 10 minutes later that I realized that Well, I thought I was talking about programmable logic controllers. My audience thought I was talking about professional learning communities because that was a totally different word and a totally different acronym. So we also tell them, make sure as you're thinking about this that you're checking that agenda at the door and that you're recognizing that you don't speak the same language. You're going to, as an industrial person, you're going to say things that make no sense to an educator. And as an educator, you're going to say things that make no sense to the industrial folks, and that's okay. You know, in manufacturing, I used to joke, we can make a decision on Monday and implement it on Wednesday and see the results on Friday. Education, we can want it to work that way. It doesn't work that way, and it's okay. You just have to understand that it's a different world.
We've definitely had those conversations as well on how long something might take to get changed.
Absolutely.
But if we've got a good relationship, and
Absolutely.
relationship is key.
Yep.
And I also think organizationally, when the cultures mesh nicely,
Yes.
it's magic.
Absolutely. When you're sharing those same goals and you're understanding, I think Juergen, you make a great point that this is a long-term play, right? We're trying to figure out how our business is going to transform, how we're going to create the workforce, not just for the end of the semester and drag a bunch of students into Rockwell, but how do we create this relationship that builds an ecosystem that produces talent almost in the same way that a manufacturing process would produce over time, a finished good, is we've got all these steps that we need to go through. And not everyone is going to turn out the way that we want to, but we got to change along the way and figure out how we inspire more and more people toward these amazing careers in advanced manufacturing. Juergen, I'd be interested, we ask Ann the question about advice for other educators. You've been doing this at least 15 years with Case Western and I'm sure others. When you think about creating a partnership like the one that you and Ann have, what recommendations and advice do you have for an industrial employer that's looking to do the same thing?
So it's important to have a continuous update. So we have a regular cadence of how we meet. And we also get regularly introduced to new faculty members. I'll give you an example of what sort of took us by surprise. We got introduced to a faculty member in a medical group.
Okay.
Which you think about industrial automation, medical, there's nothing in common.
You wouldn't think, right?
And then actually we learned out what they were doing. And they were actually creating... Yeah, but they're actually doing something really interesting for the University Cleveland Clinic. They were actually getting rid of all dead bodies in the Cleveland Clinic and actually doing everything virtual. So they were teaching anatomy
Yeah, right.
completely in virtual environment with HoloLens glasses.
No way, wow.
And so then we said,
That's really cool.
This is really interesting. Again, we're not going to tell anybody how anatomy is going to work, but we have maintenance issues. We have people only knowledgeable about certain things that might be very far remote. We have need to help operators directly on the plant floor with these HoloLenses and train them. And we can use the same technology.
Right.
Okay, instead of anatomy, we're actually putting a complete control system in place, and they can actually interact with it virtually. And out of that one came a lot of really interesting and good ideas that we would have never thought of if we would have not been introduced to some of the other faculty. So having this continuous touch points, getting introduced to also a little bit adjacencies is really, really important. And on the other hand, they keep us on track on what about your hiring plans, staying up there, for us to being in front of the students, to actually tell them, because reality is every 4 years they have a complete change of students.
Sure.
So we have to actually renew our message on a regular basis. So it's
absolutely
it's very
make sure
good.
Make sure you're staying relevant. We have a business partner in the Midwest that used to do a career day once a year with high school students, right? And that was the extent of their outreach to K-12. And one of the things that they found, they had the whole school in their local district come through their plant in October, and to inspire young people around careers in advanced manufacturing. Okay. And they said they asked these students in April, so they're there in October. They said, "What was the number one thing you remembered from that tour?" 2/3 of the kids didn't even remember being on the tour, much less being, much less what it was that they remembered. So it really speaks, I think, Juergen, to what you just said, which it has to be that constant contact, constantly reinventing your message, constantly making sure that you're relevant, because every 4 years that entire group of students is changing. I love, by the way, the example of how do we take a technology from one space and apply it in another one. And I think a lot of that is what's happening here at Automation Fair, is you're seeing people that are inspired around new technologies and saying, how does that work for my organization? Our producer just gave me the signal that we've got about 5 minutes left together. It's amazing how quickly a half an hour goes. But I want to, 2 more questions and for each of you. The first one is, as you've had some time to walk around Automation Fair, and what have you seen that's particularly inspiring or cool?
You know what? Actually, I'm really excited about the sustainability efforts that Rockwell is making. I think with the cleaner water activities that I saw over there was absolutely amazing.
Absolutely, and if there's anybody that hasn't walked in the door yet and will be, that whole environment they have with like the 3D graphic that's going on, pulling people in that sustainability area was just absolutely fascinating to me as well, and the approach to sustainability for sure.
And CASE is working towards more sustainable manufacturing, and so this is another area that we're hoping to work with Rockwell on.
Well, and it's a huge focus for Rockwell, as you know, and so I'm sure there will be plenty of opportunities. Not your first Automation Fair, Juergen, I'm sure.
Nope.
and I come every year as well, and I always come away with, I would say, a couple nuggets, probably a dozen every year of, oh my goodness, I didn't know you could do that. There you go. Anything that you've seen so far that's particularly intriguing?
So this year, I think the most interesting one for me is a lot of the introduction of cloud technologies.
Mm-hmm.
So historically, manufacturing was only, you were looking at it from a plant level, very low level. Now a lot of the design tools and also user interfaces are now all cloud hosted, and doing that at scale is completely different.
Right.
I think it's unique in the industry, but also it's unique to being in automation. And if you have an opportunity to walk around here, you'll see it in a lot of different booths.
Absolutely. A number of years ago, I wrote a white paper on the idea of Industry 4.0 and how we teach it at every level of education. And one of my subjects for that white paper was Tom O'Reilly of Rockwell Automation. And I asked him then, what do we need to do in order to prepare young people for careers in advanced manufacturing in an Industry 4.0 world? And his answer was, you need to understand everything from the edge all the way to the cloud and everything in between. And man, if that wasn't a huge prediction of what we're seeing here at Rockwell Automation Fair, is just all of this cloud computing ability, all of our ability to manage data and understand really the entire enterprise. So as we close out our time, one more question for each of you, and I'm really curious to hear the answers, because you've had such a strong presence and such a strong partnership in K-12, and I know you think a lot, as just as I do, about how do we inspire this next generation of young people and what should they be thinking about. So, Anne, one piece of advice for a high school sophomore, what would that be?
You know what, honestly, get involved. And if there is an opportunity at your high school to either take a class in engineering or a club activity that you can get involved in. If you're in Cleveland, Ohio, come to ThinkBox.
Nice. I love it. And same question for you, Juergen.
So we also support all these things from Lego League on,
right,
to all the robotics leagues. It is fantastic. Our engineers love to actually support them.
Yes.
So if you are actually an educator and you need to support to actually get it started in your school, our guys or girls love to actually help you with that one. It's really exciting, and it would be an honor for all of us to help out with that. Yeah?
And I think that's a perfect way to put the cap on the discussion that we've had today, which is really all about partnerships between educators and industrial employers and employers of all kinds, technology companies. That almost seems like software is at the core of Rockwell. You think of you as an industrial manufacturer, but it's almost an IT and digitization and software company anymore. Just amazing to see how it's evolved, and amazing to hear about how your relationship has evolved over these 15 years, all of these different levels of engagement, all of these different opportunities for young people and people of all ages to get excited about careers in advanced manufacturing and technology, and then gain those competencies that are so very important. So I want to thank both Anne Borchert, the Associate Vice President of Corporate Relations and Strategic Projects at Case Western University, and Juergen Weinhofer, Vice President of Common Architecture and Technology, Rockwell Automation. Thanks so much for being with us on the Tech Ed Podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.